Whenever you'd like.
Welcome. We are going to call the meeting to order. Roll call of the board, please.
Abrahamson. Here. Armstrong.
Here.
Chadwick. Here. Frigo.
Here.
Hirschlip is here. Ratajki. Waking.
Here.
We have an agenda before you. We need a motion to approve. We have a motion by Armstrong, second by Waking to approve the agenda. Roll call, please.
Abrahamson. Yes. Chadwick. Yes. Waking.
Yes.
Hirschlip is yes. Armstrong.
Yes.
Frigo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Proof of giving public notice.
Yep, proof in the form of a signed oral statement by the district administrator that notice of said meeting was given to the public pursuant to Wisconsin statutes was presented. Proof showed that the written notice had been posted on the official bulletin boards. Yes, bulletin boards, multiple, being in phase 2, and communicated to the Courier and the district website on June 24th.
Perfect. We need a motion to approve proof of giving public notice. We have a motion by Abramson, second by Chadwick to approve proof of giving public notice. Roll call, please.
Hirschlip, yes. Armstrong.
Yes.
Abrahamson. Yes. Chadwick. Yes. Waking.
Yes.
Frigo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have number 5 is our consent agenda. We have meeting minutes dated June 17th that were in your board packet. Are there any adjustments or amendments to those minutes? If none, we also have a resignation of the facility services coordinator, and we're offering a contract, a letter of employment to the elementary special education staff member. With that, is there anything you want to pull out for the end of the meeting? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Waking. I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
Hirschlip will second.
We have a motion by Waking, second by Hirschlip to approve the consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Waking.
Yes.
Armstrong.
Yes.
Chadwick. Yes. Hirschlip, yes. Abrahamson. Yes. Frigo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Number 6 is new business, discussion and potential action regarding the approval to move the July 15th regular board meeting to July 22nd. And I think there's some financial reasons for that. Rob?
Just seeking an extra week as we close out the fiscal year, which ended yesterday prior to the audit. If there's an opportunity, which I'm not sure if there is or isn't yet, but we're not that far into the process. But if there's an opportunity, there would be an opportunity for the board to transfer some money into a capital improvement fund trust. So this just gives us a week to get closer to certainty on that. So
Perfect.
if that works for the board, I think it would be advantageous for us.
Does anyone have a concern with moving the meeting from Wednesday, July 15th to Wednesday, July 22nd? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve that movement.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Abramson, second by Waking to approve moving the July 15th regular board meeting to July 22nd. Roll call, please.
Armstrong.
Yes.
Abrahamson. Yes. Hirschlip, yes. Waking.
Yes.
Chadwick. Yes. Frigo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under new business, we have letter B, which is listening session, racial justice in Marshall Public Schools. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Jansen, who is the Marshall Education Association president, and he's going to be the facilitator for tonight's meeting. So you won't hear a lot from the board members. You'll hear a lot from Mr. Jansen. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming out, even though we're amidst a pandemic right now. I appreciate all the setup for the room from the district and making sure that we're all social distancing and doing everything we need to do in that respect. Today's session is pretty important. We're going to be talking about racial justice in our school system, in our public schools. And the heart of this is a listening session. The schools basically need to hear from our community. Haven't had a very good track record of reaching out to the community and communication in the past. And it's important that we continue to engage our community, especially in light of recent events, that we engage our community and our people of color in our community and hear from.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Hopefully I won't do an echo or anything. Is that better?
Yep, thank you.
And it's very important that we hear from our people of color in our community and bring them to the table so that we can have a fair and just school for every kid that walks through these doors, K through 12. And that we have an equitable experience for every child that walks through our doors and have a welcoming community. So with that in mind, I want to introduce Claire Lewandowski as well. She's going to help me facilitate the online portion of this. She's also an MEA member like myself. Claire, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Lewandowski. I'm hoping everyone can hear me in the different formats that we're gathered in right now. I teach social studies at the middle school. And we just wanted to share a little bit about the context for this meeting. Mr. Jansen shared a little bit already, but at this point, we're kind of interested in really hearing from community members of color and really listening to what they have to say. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we're really grounding this session in is the fact that we're kind of in the middle of a national moment of reckoning, kind of looking at our conscience, looking at what's been going on in the news and in our neighborhoods and communities, and thinking about how that affects the places that we are most close to, our schools and our neighborhoods. So what happened shortly after George Floyd was killed in end of May, a couple of alumni from the Marshall School District created a petition speaking out about what they saw as a good first step by the Marshall School District, but they were interested in seeing more specific action being taken around how to work toward racial justice in our school district. And members of the MEA, of the union here, were pretty inspired to see this leadership, and we wanted to create a space where folks could feel safe to share their stories. We won't go too much into the petition today. We think that could be something to continue talking about as we move forward with this work. But for those that are unfamiliar with it, there were 6 demands, and we do want to quickly highlight those. After we do that, we'll talk about some ground rules to make sure that the space is safe for the folks that are sharing. And then after that, we'll get into listening to people that have chosen to come here and share some stories today. And that should hopefully be pretty much the last that you hear from Mr. Jansen and myself. So the petition demands that were brought up by the Marshall alumni. The first one was to have representation across all levels of MPS staff. The second one was mandatory anti-racist training and education for staff.
The third one was mental health resources for Black students and people of color in the district, K-12. The fourth one was diversity and education, so taking a look at our curriculum. Systemic racism, representation of more different groups and people and what we actually teach to all of our students, K-12. And to really amplify voices of people of color in the content that students interact with on a day-to-day basis, not just celebrating one-off holiday events, calendar events, but rather integrating it into our K-12 curriculum all the way through.
The fifth demand was to remove officers and SROs from schools and school events. And the sixth demand was to have the district follow through on the commitment that they issued in the wake of the death of George Floyd, which was to create an equitable district for all students.
So after we had met with petition creators and heard from them, we met to talk about how can we make this a safe space. It takes a lot for someone to stand up and speak at a board meeting, let alone talk about something that's as complicated as race in our schools and what that looks like when we teach students K through 12. And so basically we wanted to make this a safe space. There are probably many folks who would like to share tonight. We need to make sure that this is a safe space for them. With that in mind, listening is the key tonight. Listen above all else. Leadership in this context looks like stepping back. So this is the last you're going to hear from myself, Claire, and the board this evening. listen to listen, not to reply, just be present. Don't cut off the speaker who has the floor.
The third expectation is that there will be a time for naming solutions that will come, but tonight isn't the place for that. Our hope is that this isn't the last time that we'll have this conversation, and sometimes focusing on solutions or what's already been done can make it hard for us to really hear what's being shared. And then finally, number 4, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. We might hear things that make us feel discomfort, and that's a sign of growth. It can be a starting place for empathy. It's a really good thing to sit with and focus on. And finally, hearing what is shared is a way of taking the first step to repair any harm that has been done. So that's kind of our ground rules. Listen above all else. Don't cut off the speaker. We'll name solutions eventually, but not today. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. I will mention briefly that for folks that are in person there at the cafeteria, you should have access to some paper slips. We ask that instead of raising hands and kind of asking questions of the speaker, that you write down questions, reflections, thoughts, reactions on those slips of paper so that you'll process that. And for folks that are participating digitally, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a Google form with some reflection questions. If you want to have that open or you want to complete that afterwards, you can. Totally optional and anonymous, but just a space for you to reflect that is not necessarily verbally right here in this space.
And for those of you that are physically present in the meeting, those cards and pens are right at the first table when you came in the door. If you want to stop and grab one of those on your way out. And leave it right on the table for us at the end, that would be great. With that, I want to invite Fania Valencia to be our first opening speaker tonight. Beyond that, I know there are other students and potentially other parents and adults in the room that want to speak. But I just wanted to open up with one specific speaker, so we had a starter, and then it'll be pretty much open from there on out. All right. For those of you that want to speak online too, I'll ask that you just put your name in the chat or give Claire a chat, and then she can help get you ready to go. I believe you'll have the ability to mute and unmute yourself when you want to speak for the online participants.
Really quickly, hi, this is Laura McCarty. I teach physical education at the middle school, and I am the vice president of the MEA. I just wanted to let everyone know that this is being recorded. So if you don't want your screen to be seen, just feel free to take that away if you are digital. The reason we're doing this is because some people were not able to be here tonight. So we are going to put the link on our Facebook page, which will take you to our YouTube page so that you can see this if anything happens and comes up that you need to leave, or if anyone was unable to attend.
Thank you for that, Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Fania Valencia, and I have 2 children that have attended their whole school life here. One will be a freshman this upcoming fall, and my son will be a junior at the high school, but he did start 4K through now. There has been many issues that I have brought up to the school in regards to racial calling. It all, actually, I've had many from the elementary school up to, I would say, like freshman year for my son. But the first incident, which I never realized happened until my son was actually in middle school, was he was in elementary school and he was singing a rap song that included the N-word. Right away, the teacher called him into the office. And I just found out this one. He was in middle school, so I'm really pissed off about that. But so they called him to the principal's office, and there's a police officer, and no one bothered to call me to tell him that he was, you know, like, don't say that word, which I totally understand. But no one told me the incident until after school and until after the day was over. So I can just imagine a little elementary kid being told not to say that word with a police officer in front of him. So that's one. Another one, middle school. My son played basketball both in the outside club and the school club. And some of the Black kids were being asked if they could be called that N-word or if they could have the Black card. And then my son was also told to go back to Mexico. My son is a U.S. citizen born in Madison, Wisconsin. So that didn't go well with me. I reported it to the school and the coaches. The coaches actually did reply and were like, we don't know what to do. Like, I don't know which club it happened. So that was that, and they kind of brushed it off. The principal, on the other hand, never, ever, ever replied to me. So I took things into my own hands and wrote an email to all the basketball parents. And I told them, if you want your racist kid to never play your favorite sports, I will make that happen because my son does not deserve to be around kids that are telling him to go home or to tell him to go back to a place that he doesn't even know and to be called or asked to be, use the N-word or the Black card. And nobody ever mentioned that. Finally, this year, there was that Percy that came into the school and kind of talked about it, which made me feel a little better, but things aren't better. Like there are white kids saying, why can't we say the N-word if we invented it? So those are some of the instances and things that my kids have seen at school. Also teachers saying, don't do the precedents. I don't know what that was about, but there was a video that kids watched about the equality and everybody should be treated right. And at the end of the video, President Trump came on and the brown kids booed him. Well, the white kid said, if you boo him again, you're gonna get deported. And the teacher called out the brown kids not to boo the president, yet never called out the white child to not say you're gonna be deported. Again, all these kids are US citizens, so there's no reason for them to say that. So those are the instances that my kids have seen their whole school life here. I have wanted to move from here many, many times because my friend from Madison, why do you live there? Why do you live there? I used to love the community. I love that my kids knew all the friends. I moved around from town to town when we were little. So for me to have this stability, my kids going to school, having friends that they've known since, 4K, to me, that's a great thing. But as they're growing, that friendship is no friendship anymore. Like they're separated now. Like I remember all their little friends from, like elementary, even middle school, like they're no friends anymore. Because they're coming to realize that these kids do not support them or they're just plain racist, which is sad. I mean, I know where I live. I'm not scared to say I'll get called a name or my kids will get called. I know what I'm expecting. But it is sad that my kids don't see that. My kids don't see color. They don't see why a brown person talking to them Spanish know that they speak Spanish. They have no clue. They've asked me many times, how do they know who speaks Spanish? So for them to like me know that it's color and they don't know it, I think I've taught them a good thing. To not say it's a white and colored people, like it's not. But we are a small community and I feel that the white community is very close and I want that for the whole community, not just white people to say, oh, I know my neighbor. No, it should be everyone. And we should be teaching that respect in school because that's where all of our kids meet. So that's just my say, and I hope something happens because it's a small little town and we all want that, like calmness, relax. I don't want to think that I'm going to be driving through and have the police follow me every time there's a new police officer. So I hope it starts in the school because that's where everybody gets educated. Thank you.
Francis Flores, school inputs. Thank you for those stories. The experiences are very hard to share, so thank you, especially for going through.
And at this time, I just want to invite anyone to come to the microphone, students, parents. I'd only planned on kicking off with one, so I wanted to open up the floor. Or online too. I'm physically here and I'm very much used to teaching in the classroom. But online as well. If anyone would like to chat, Claire, and then she can make sure that you're unmuted and ready to go. We got one online.
Mr. Jansen?
All set, Karina?
Great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I wrote this out just to keep my my thoughts organized because I have a lot to say. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak and share my experience. And I want to
Is it on hers? Karina, if you can hear us, you might have to exit the meet and re-enter.
Everyone's letting her know that she's frozen, so she'll transition and work through it.
Hope she sees her screen. Aaron, can you message her? She did. Okay. Hopefully Karina can come back to us here. It looks like she left the meeting. She can log back in. While we're waiting, is there anyone else that would like to come up to the mic physically in the space or in virtual would like to take the mic?
Hello, my name is Deb Pierce, and I'm a community member and a former employee of the school district for 17 years. And my grandchildren live in this community and go to school in this district. I remember when my first grandchild was, I don't know, 3 years old or whatever, and he reported to me, "Yep, my dad has brown ears and my mom has white ears." It was as simple as that. Unfortunately, it's not that simple for him or his brother anymore. And unfortunately, my daughter and son-in-law couldn't be here tonight, but I do know that there's been several instances of the kids being called N-word, and they report it. And the perception on their part is that nothing gets done about it. It's not addressed, at least to their knowledge. Now, that doesn't mean it isn't, but they are not aware that it is addressed, and it continues to the extent where they just simply stop reporting it because nobody's listening anyway. Another situation, I guess, that I think, it's probably hits home for many. There was a basketball tournament and the opposing team, even though they were winning and they were 2 grades ahead, they still felt the need to call a racial slur to the team. And when it was reported, nobody did anything about it. And when I watched my grandson walk over to his dad, it just broke my heart because he said, "You might as well get used to it." And that was just in the last 6 months, I kid you not. But, I know that my kids and my grandkids love it here, and I know that we can make it a better place for all of them. But I just hate to see that, because if that's happening for them, obviously, that and worse are happening for others. I guess those are the big points that that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think Karina is back in.
She'd like to unmute herself.
Oh,
Okay, let's hope this works. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start over. I don't know where I cut off, but. So I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak and share my experience. And I want to say that I'm not the only student of color. My experiences don't speak for every single student of color, nor do I want to take the focus away from my Black peers. As a Latina, I can only share my experiences, but I want everyone to keep in mind that right now we're fighting for our Black brothers and sisters and the racial injustices happening across the country. So my name is Karina Falcon Gonzalez. I am a first-generation Latina and a 2016 Marshall High School graduate. I was raised my whole life in Marshall, attending Marshall Public Schools from pre-K through high school. And although I'm really grateful for my education and for some of the amazing teachers who guided me through, there's no denying that there is a need for change. From pre-K through middle school, I was labeled as one of the few Latinx students who didn't need the extra assistance from English as a second language classrooms and teachers. I never got to partake in class filled with peers who looked like me, who shared the same culture as me, who got me. Educators might have thought like, oh, this is amazing. Like, here's this little Mexican girl who excels in reading and writing, who doesn't need the extra help, but they never saw like the impact that's had on my identity. This is the first time anyone from Marshall, my teachers, peers, have heard me pronounce my name, how it's meant to be pronounced, how my mother intended it to be pronounced. This because I made the unnecessary effort to Americanize my name. I was ashamed of causing others discomfort in their inability to pronounce my name correctly. I changed a huge part of my identity to conform with the comfort of others. I accepted nicknames and mispronunciations in order to not call attention to myself. There were times I would pretend not to know Spanish because I was sick of the constant, ooh, say something in Spanish. I hated my culture, and worst of all, I was embarrassed of my parents and their accent. Embarrassed of the people who brought me into this world, who uprooted their entire lives for me, who struggled beyond belief to give me the same opportunities as my peers. All this because my interaction was limited to my white peers and teachers. I didn't have that outlet where I could embrace myself and my identity, surrounded by those who understood me, by those who shared my culture and my experiences. It wasn't until high school when Mrs. Krause accepted me into her classroom, which serves a majority of students of color, that I felt like I had a sense of belonging. Her classroom served as my safe haven, a space where I could joke around in Spanish and it would be okay, where I could ask even the simplest questions and it would be received with compassion. This classroom is the reason I blossomed as a strong Latina woman I am today, proud of my roots and proud of the color of my skin. This is in no way intended to bash Marshall Public Schools, but instead it is intended to open the eyes of those who have found comfort in turning a blind eye. Although Marshall is not the worst of the worst, that does not mean there isn't room for change. I want to describe a few incidents I experienced in my time there. The first one being I was in 6th grade, and up to that point, I had been really lucky with such amazing teachers. This year wasn't the same. I had probably one of the worst teachers throughout my time at Marshall. It had been a rough year. We had one student, a Black student in particular, who was disruptive often and would constantly cause our teacher to lose her mind. Why he acted the way he did and the way the teacher and principal reacted is a conversation for another time. But what I want to focus on is how the teacher decided to end the school year. She decided that on the last day of school, we would all circle up and go around giving compliments to someone in our class as like a nice way to end the school year. The teacher started by addressing the student and complimenting him for teaching them how to deal with students like him. That's kind of a backhanded compliment. As 12-year-olds, we all knew it was wrong and a very uncomfortable silence followed. I wanted to give this teacher the benefit of the doubt and say that they were just going through a rough patch, but what they did was inexcusable, and I can guarantee this public humiliation was ingrained in this kid's mind. Now there was another kid in our class who was white and just as disruptive. However, the teacher's interaction with him was drastically different. He was given countless opportunities to fix his behavior. What message does this send to our students of color? Another instance, as I mentioned, I'm a first-generation student. My parents know nothing about applying for college, FAFSA scholarships, all that stuff. So naturally, I went to our guidance counselor at the time looking for guidance, as his title implies. I went in there not knowing what to ask because as many first-gen students, we don't even know what we don't know. I was met with a condescending tone telling me that I was smart and would figure it out. If it had not been for Ms. Krause in her classroom, I would not be where I am today, almost graduating from Marquette University. I know I've mentioned Ms. Krause in her classroom quite a bit, but she's a saint sent to help students of color. I know students would not have graduated without her because she put in the time and effort to force them to turn in their work or to help them understand material. I'm not saying she's the only one who cared, but she was the only one who had the resources and the space to be able to focus on students on that level. Her classroom was intended for the purpose of focusing on the specific needs of first-generation students, while other teachers have too many of their students to make sure are passing to focus on one student who's fallen behind. This is only a tiny portion of what I experienced and witnessed while being a student at Marshall Public Schools. I'm sure everyone has seen the petition going around demanding Marshall Public Schools implement changes, and I think it does an extraordinary job of outlining concrete solutions to some of these issues. For those who have not read and signed the petition, there's just some comments I wanted to add on to some of the points. The first one about diversifying the staff. Throughout my time at Marshall Public Schools, I didn't see a single teacher or staff member of color. And if I did, their role was too insignificant for me to remember. The only people who looked like me were the custodians and the lunch employees. Now, is that the only place for people like me? That's kind of the message that was sent. We need teachers and staff we can relate to, who look like us, who understand us. A white teacher can try, they can learn the language and study the culture, but it's not the same as the lived experiences of people of color. The third point, I wanted to focus on the creating a dedicated space for Black and students of color in each school. Right there, it calls for more safe spaces. There's a ton of research. I've actually been doing research with a professor on safe spaces and students of color. And it points to safe spaces being a significant predictor of educational accomplishment in students of color. So we don't need to be immersed into the rest of the student population 100% of the school day. That's pretty much simulation. That's the erasure of our identity. That's what the United States has been doing for centuries, and we're still not in a good place. The fourth point, we shouldn't need to wait until we're in college to know the rich history of Black and brown people, not only the good, but also the bad and the ugly. The US tends to want to hide all the bad things that they've done, but I think it's right that we know that as well and not have to, not everybody gets a college education, so why would that history only be accessible to them? So the fifth point, having police officers present in schools facilities facilitates the school to prison pipeline, which is proven to affect students of color directly. Why not use those funds to hire more psychologists and actually get to the root of the problematic behaviors? And finally, the sixth point, it's probably the most important one, is to take responsibility for justice. We are all sick and tired of false promises in order to calm the waters. We want real effort and we want real change. Even though I'm very happy that there are people out there who recognize the need for change, it shouldn't take such drastic events like the murder of George Floyd and every other person of color wrongfully murdered to spark such conversations on the racial injustices happening every single day. On top of that, we should not have to advocate for ourselves and give examples of racial injustices experienced in order for someone to finally listen to us. Every single one of you are highly educated individuals, and I know you see the changes that need to be made. If they haven't been made, it's because someone is choosing to turn a blind eye. That's easy to do when it doesn't impact you or your children directly. I'm here to ask that the demands laid out in the petition be taken seriously. Thank you for your time.
Gracias por esos cuentos y las contribuciones. Thank you for those stories and contributions, Karina. Would anyone else like to come up to the mic, physically present or online? Mr. Dean?
I don't know how I'm gonna follow that up. A lot of powerful things he said. Excuse me if I'm talking very soft and very slow. I just got over a major medical scare, so I'm just happy to be here. So first I want to say I'm an employee of the Marshall School District. I work at the high school right now, but I've worked in all of the schools since I've been here. And I'm going to say something that might make some of you feel a little uncomfortable. What the world is going through right now, you see a lot of African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, very angry. And the one thing that I ask people is to use what some call white privilege. Now, I'm not saying you guys were served with a silver spoon in your mouth, but let's be a little honest. When you guys say something, it's heard a little louder versus, the angry Black man. So I had a situation last year where I was at the vet And some dude drove past my car and called me the N-word. So I had two options: to go after him, or go in the vet office and go get my dog's medicine. So I got my dog's medicine because at that time, that person wasn't risking my career, ended up in jail or anything like that. But what I did do is I went on Facebook, and I went on Facebook Live, and I told people how I felt. And I was reached out to by some community members, and they're like, hey, let us see what we can do. Let us see if we can find this person and see what his angle was. Nothing came out of it, but just for the fact that the community reached out to me and say, hey, we got your back. We're gonna work with you on this one. It meant a lot. So now what we're asking as Black and brown people is for the same thing. We're asking for the community as a front to show people that you are with us and to show people that you are willing to help educate our kids a little better, because let's be quite frank, a lot of us learn about Black people in February for Black History Month. It wasn't until we got a little older, we learned a little bit more. And she spoke on it very, very candidly. I think with our education, we should be a little bit more cultured. Learn about the Hispanic community, the Black community, the Asian community. We're not talking about disbanding the white community. We're asking to be treated as an equal, just like everyone else. And I think that's what, sorry about that. Oof. I'm gonna find a trick to this sooner or later. And I think that's what a lot of our protesters are talking about. We just want to be treated equal. You know, just last week, I was in Watertown, I was pulled over by the police. The worst feeling in the world. I don't have a rap sheet. My car is insured. I own my car. And he just started asking me all these questions for no reason. I applied, you know, because he seemed scared, number one. I don't want to deal with a scary officer. That's how bad things happen. Get my license, took care of my insurance stuff, and I went on about my business. But when I talked to people about it, they were very upset because they felt that I was targeted. Sure, that could have been it. But the whole thing is, no one should feel scared when they get pulled over by the police. Now, I lived in this community for almost 4 years. I had zero issues with the police. I became friends with a couple of the officers just so we can get a feel for each other. You know, I'm here in the community. I will work with a number of your kids. Some of you, Mr. Waken has let me be in his house before and stuff like that. Really appreciate it. Beautiful house, by the way. People like Mr. Grady has always had an open door policy for me. If I've had any issues, I can email them, I can call them up and say, hey, here's what's going on, set up a meeting. So I think we should just all be a little bit more aware of that and just try to help one another, you know. That's what it's all about, you know. I have a kid that's gone from elementary school, middle school, and now it's going to be in the high school. Luckily, him personally, face-to-face, has not dealt with any racial issues. I don't even know how he would react if something happened. Probably crush him, because he sees people as people, you know, because that's the way I raise my children. So as far as the educational standpoint, you know, I would think, hey, you know what? Let's try to make stuff where kids want to learn, you know, because Black History Month doesn't always have to be about slavery. And that's a good chunk of it sometimes, or about Emmett Till, or Martin Luther King. If you can talk about Dr. King, talk about everything. How he started, how he ended. Talk about Malcolm X a little bit, you know. Some of that stuff is left out, so I'm only a cog in a wheel, but I try to make my voice heard. This young lady talked about a safe space. I try to be that safe space for all kids. Black, white, Hispanic. I take it upon myself to be that safe space. Because I just don't teach during the school year. There's kids today who have graduated, who are going to graduate, and who are still in middle and high school who I talk to all the time. So they feel safe talking to me. So I'm just one person who's trying to make a difference. I didn't have a huge story, but I felt compelled to talk because she had a great story. And I just want to say thank you for everyone showing up. Thank you guys for putting this on, and it's a nice night.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up to the mic physically present, or anyone in the chat?
Hello, everyone. My name is Olga Saba. I graduated last year to the class of 2019. Right now, I live in St. Perry. And I've been in Marshall since 6th grade. And ever since I came here, like, everyone was very welcoming. And, like, I made a lot of friends, and I was happy that I was able to do that. One thing that I want to talk about is microaggressions. I feel bad that like I started learning about this last year. Microaggressions were like very common. I didn't really like experience them myself, but I heard and saw people like say things like people have nappy hair, or like one of them would be like about like how African Americans are strong and stuff like that. And not just for Black people, but I've heard it for Hispanics as well, and Asians as well, like how Asians are smart. And I feel like that even though those people were saying those things, I feel like there wasn't a lot done to stop the microaggressions, because like I feel like everyone was just cool with it, and they were kind of like, I guess they don't want. I feel like some students didn't want to say anything because I guess they don't want to upset their friends. And I feel like that was like a bad thing that I've always heard, and I feel like it should have been taken care of in another way. I'm a little nervous.
You're fine. You're doing great.
Yeah, so that was one of the main things. Personally, for me, I feel like this community has been very nice and caring and helpful. My family and I have been here for a while, and we haven't really experienced any racism. And I feel like everyone here is very loving. And I have been talking to past Black students, and they felt that like they have seen some racism from like past alumni or any other friends that were here in Marshall. But they have also told me that like whenever they went through that situation with like a friend saying like the N-word, or a friend saying like like a microaggression, like they were getting in trouble rather than the person who said it. So I feel like something could have been done to prevent them getting in trouble rather than the other person being fired. So I just wanted to talk about that. And I just feel like, again, going back to how this community has been there for me, I feel like it's all about love, and I always love making people happy and smiling. So I hope that we can continue giving out love, because that's what I'm all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come up to the mic this evening?
Hello, everyone. My name is Liz. I graduated in 2017. I wrote a few things down. So initially, when Paul first reached out to me, I was kind of thinking about it, and I was hesitant to come at first, and it kind of caused me to reflect a lot about, because I went to Marshall my whole life, since pre-K until graduation. So it like caused me to first reflect back on like every single microaggression or blatant racism or like anything I had experienced in martial. And then, I mean, that's not good. Like those aren't good memories. So then I like stopped myself because I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, they're not good memories. And so it was kind of like, why do I have to be here and share my stories when we've been like reporting them my whole life? Like, I don't know, there's nothing new, like, you know about them. So that was kind of like, why do I have to like repeat these like terrible memories that I have? And then also like being at Marshall, like a big thing for me, like initially when I was younger was that there was no PSC staff. Like it was just me and literally every single like other white person in the room. And I remember like that was the first time I had really like questioned why I really had like a different skin tone than all my friends and all my teachers, and that like no one looked like me. And then on top of that, anyone who ever looked like me, we always got pulled out of class to just be asked like a ton of questions because it was like this English proficiency thing, but no one ever explained it to me. No one ever explained why I was doing it, why I had to do it, why any of it, like, and neither did my parents. My parents never got an explanation because I was talking to my mom. She's like, I didn't even know you had to do that. So that was just kind of like messed up to me. And so every time it was just the only people who looked like me, we were always pulled aside, and that was my whole life at Marshall was anyone who ever looked like me, we all had to like be taken out of class and like prove that like we could compete with other people that like were white. So like the one that sticks out the most was in middle school. It's kind of funny actually, because we were all pulled out of class and we were asked to just, we were all pulled like out, and when we were pulled out, we basically just like went over my social studies class again, and we just relearned everything I had just learned in that class. And it was only other people who were Latinx that did it with me. And I remember I was so confused and I was so upset because my whole life I have like always been told like you're not as smart as like your white peers. You can't like compete with them, like you need this extra help. When I didn't ever feel like I needed it. And so I remember I always complained until one day, I think it was you, Mr. Jansen, you actually were like, fine, you don't have to be here anymore. And for me, that was like the first time I felt like I was heard and that I was like, they actually like see me that I can compete. But also at the same time, they also felt like that was like when I lost like any chance of getting like any help truly in the Marshall schooling system. Because after that, I like didn't really get any help. And I would be lying if I said like I never got any help while here at Marshall, but I would also say that I don't really think the help I got was help. I think all the help that I ever got made me feel less than like my white peers. It always made me feel like I was behind and that there was something wrong with me. So that's why I never wanted the help, and I always denied the help. And I just always tried to like do my best and go up like do way more because I always felt like I needed to, and that like I always needed to prove myself that like I was just as good, like I was just as smart, and like I could do it. Like I didn't need extra help, like I was smart and I could do it. So that was like a big thing that I had always gotten through Marshall. So that one just always stuck out to me the most. And then a big one for me too is my senior year, like I felt like applying to college, and I am a first generation college student too. So my parents had no idea like what anything had to do with college. So I was doing it all on my own and trying to all understand it on my own. And because I had refused so much help like before, like I didn't really get any. And then to me that year, it like felt like everything that I had felt the Marshall schooling system had been telling me that like I couldn't compete and that I wasn't smart enough. It just like all felt like it was all real in that moment because like I had no clue what I was doing. And so like, yeah, like my teachers all like always said that they would like help me and all that. But then at the same time, when everyone else in my grade is like telling me that, oh yeah, I did that already, or oh yeah, my mom did that for me, or like, oh yeah, that was so easy. And like hearing like that, it just like the whole time it was like everything they like told me my whole life is true. And it's like I'm realizing this now. So that like really hurt. And like I remember like finally like I was like, I can't do this. And I asked Ms. Krause, and like you were like a huge help, and I got through it, and like it hurt, but like the whole time I was like everything they told me, like this is true, because I couldn't do that. So like my big thing would be like look at the student, like don't assume that I need help or any other children of color need help because of their skin tone. Like look at the student, like look at everyone. And then if they just happen to be like POC or white, then they get that help. They'll just assume that because I'm Mexican that I need extra help in a subject. So that would be like my big thing. And then like I was again, so like I was really hesitant to one because I was like, is this like one of those things that like is just kind of like for show, like you know, say like you listen and then because we've been complaining, we've been reporting, we've been saying all these things, but nothing has ever really been come up. But then I like stopped and like my little brother's still in the schooling system, and I was like, I can't just like not say anything when him and his friends are still going through this. And I was like, I really hope he has a better experience. And I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of glad that I'm like way older than him too, because then it's like I don't know, I feel like I can help him a lot more. But the instance like with him, like he like comes home and he tells me things too, and I'm like, that's like really messed up. Like, why are you going through that? And then like the big one for him was he just like grew up speaking mainly English. Like he doesn't really know Spanish all that well, but they got like a new student and it was just assumed, and this student couldn't speak any English. He only spoke Spanish too, and so it was just assumed that my little brother could translate for him the entire day and like the entire time. So, but he obviously doesn't know English, so then he like was like falling behind and like couldn't do like his own school because he was just assumed to help this other student. And like, don't get me wrong, like yeah, obviously like more than willing, I would have helped someone else in that situation too, but he wasn't even asked, and my parents weren't asked. Like it wasn't until afterwards that Jacob like kind of like told my mom, and then she told me, and it was just kind of like, well, why was this just assumed on you? Like you don't even can't, like we all know he can't really speak Spanish, so we were all so confused that he was just assumed to like be able to help the student all day long when I mean he can't really speak it that well, and then he was falling behind. So that was kind of crazy. So overall, I just like hope that like I don't know, like what we're saying can actually like be used to move forward. And I hope to like see some change moving forward.
Thank you. You would like to speak on online? Oh, that's not text.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. My name is Kylia. I graduated in 2018. I'm just gonna let you know ahead of time. There's a couple teachers that know just how I speak, this is how I am. I tend to be scrambled, but at the same time, it all goes together. When I was in high school, around my freshman to junior year, freshman year I was a new girl, but I felt emotionally trapped. Just like at home and in school, it was hard for me to open up. But that doesn't mean I wasn't observant, even though I was making mistakes. I admit that. Until I met Kraus my senior year, I was able to, the way she picked at my brain is the way that I pictured every teacher to, no matter the color of the skin, no matter what they look like, no matter if straight, LGBTQ, whatever. She respected every single student, no matter if they just walk past or if she's known them pretty well. And even to this day, me and her, I would say good friends, because I mean, she sent this invite to me. And I'm happy to be a part of. I mentioned to her when I was in school, about learning about police brutality, because it was also during that time too. Police brutality was very strong, and it was going on during that time too as well. And sad to say, it had to be another brother lost, but in order for stuff like this to be brought out, and during like the protests and such, to me the protests are they're not just talking about police brutality. To me, it's just talking about equality, talking about peace, true peace. And I think as well, we need more people. Wait, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. We need more people who are going to not see us as the color of our skin, but the person we are. And how we learn as individuals. And certain situations in high school that I've witnessed, like certain teachers, they never handled it properly, or they remembered the situations that was in the past and they kept it on that specific student, not understanding that that was a mistake and they can learn. It was even stronger on the Black community as well. To me, another thing, what I've heard from students that are in school now is that like the dress code is easier to understand, but I do remember some kids wearing racial clothing when I was in school, and none of it was brought up. I also do remember almost every year as I continue to get more comfortable in my own skin and more comfortable speaking out my problems, I remember being asked the same question whenever it came to us asking for rights, but us Black people asking for equality. And that question is the same question with the whole Black Lives Matter. It's asked all lives matter, but all lives matter, but blue lives matter. To me, that's just a, what do you say, counterpart probably of the situation. And also the history that's not properly taught, because I'm being asked that question every single year. To me, I think because it's a question that I'm asked every single year, I think personally that should be a question that should be asked by teachers, and teachers should be teaching that. So like the right amount of history, equal and right amount of history, both the bad and the good. And genders as well, because genders was judged also. I can definitely tell when I was in high school, no matter if a person was straight, LGBTQ, whatever, they were judged, and that even made it harder for me to come out. But to me, how it's supposed to be fixed, I think teaching, it should be properly fixed. Everybody should be taught the same way. The same amount of respect. If there is going to be one person that is passing, the more people that are passing means should have, okay, if there's a group of students that are passing, the ones that are failing, the teachers should focus on more. And yeah, I'm shaking. I can't think of anything else to say.
Thank you very much for sharing. I think I have at least.
Thank you, Claire.
I think I had one at the back that wanted to come up earlier.
Hi, my name is Andrea Gonzalez. I moved here in 1991, And very much like Fiona and a lot of other people here, I moved here because it was a small community. I wanted to raise my children here. My son has gone through the school system. My oldest daughter has gone through the school system now. And my youngest is a senior this year. I've raised my kids to call out the injustices of the world, and I'm very proud that they do that. They're strong women that I've raised, and I'm so glad for that, because hearing the stories here, I can relate to so many of them, and it breaks my heart. In this community, there are some strong ties. Everybody is related here. And that's part of the problem, because I think what we do is we make concessions for a lot of the families here that have been here forever. And that's sad. I have sat in the football stands watching a game because my girls are very active in sports, and I have heard families say, grandpas particularly, it was a grandpa, a very well-known family here in town, give it to the N-word, you know he can run. And I'm complacent because I didn't say anything. I got up and moved. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made my kids feel uncomfortable. But I know that family. I interact with them. I interact with their kids. I see them every day. And so this is a teaching moment, and I hope that I am very proud of the school for taking this opportunity to engage the community. We're all braving our lives right now, coming in and talking about this, but it is like others have said, this is an opportunity for us to make a difference. I hope that our community takes advantage of it. I hope the school board continues to bring forth these types of sessions and let people talk about their experiences, because one voice is all of our voices, and we need to make sure that we stand together and that we can create the change we want to see. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Claire, do we have anyone else in the chat online that we were waiting to hear from? Anyone else here in the room in the cafeteria? Let's come up tonight.
Hi everybody, I'm Ben Lusk, and I graduated from Marshall last year. And I want to talk about some of my experiences there, about learning. So my first year of college, my first semester, I took an American Indian Studies class, and that was really the first time that I really understood white privilege. And I think that's a shame, because I think that stuff needs to be taught in high school, because a lot of my peers, they don't understand white privilege. And they don't understand, sorry. And another thing I'd like to say is that it took me until about a month ago to really understand systemic racism as well. I've heard the term before, but I didn't really know exactly what it meant and how much of an impact it has. And again, I think that I should have learned that in high school. I should have learned about redlining, how it's still affecting people today, and I think I should have learned about disparities in the healthcare, law enforcement. It goes on and on. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the cafeteria like to come up to the mic tonight?
Hi, I'm Mary Kraus. I really had no intention of speaking. This is not my story. But as the bilingual teacher at the high school, I witness a lot that my students go through. Our bilingual students. I appreciate the item in the petition that you put out that calls for anti-racist teaching to the teachers, training to the teachers, especially now in our political arena. There's a very, very fine line between someone stating a political opinion and flat out racism. And teachers are often put in a place where we don't know how to deal with it. We've heard a few times the importance of the safe space in the school. Some people see it as segregation, as Karina pointed out, and those were all her own words that she's studying at Marquette University. I did not have anything to do with that. But students come running to me to tell me all of the times that they're being told to go home. What are you going to do when they send you home? This happened in 2016. A student was confronted and asked, what are you going to do when they send you home, send you back, when they build the wall? And the student said, dude, I was born here. And the other students countered with, well, then what are you going to do when they send your parents home? Which is a fear that many of our kids live with every single day. It's very easy to hide behind politics in a statement like that. How does a teacher react to it? How does a teacher diffuse it? How does a teacher make everyone safe in the school? So I appreciate that point. Everyone, all of us, need that kind of training in today's society.
Anyone else like to come up to the mic tonight? Anyone waiting in the wings to come in online and take over?
Hi, everybody. My name is Wyatt Augustine Marcio, and first I want to thank all of the speakers, especially standing right here. It's hard, and I'm clearly a white person. It's a lot harder to come up here and share those experiences for people who have experienced them. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you to everyone for listening. I think it's extremely important. And I wanted to talk about my experience as a student in Marshall Public Schools and since. So I graduated in 2012. I was born in Madison, but spent all of my life in Marshall on Main Streets. I know this town very, very well. All of my formative years were spent here. All of my formative education was spent here. And so when I graduated from Marshall and I went to college in a city that was 50% Black and a university that was 8% Black, the school is starting to grapple with those problems. And I have friends and classmates who were at the forefront of pushing change and a representative university and a just university. And when the Black students started asking for representation and fair education and all of those things, I didn't understand why. When I looked at the situation, we lived in the same place, we took the same classes, we paid the same tuition. I didn't understand why they were asking for change. And I came to see that was my first real interaction with a conversation about race, about racial justice, about injustice, about systemic racism. because it was something that I had never been introduced to. And I'm certainly not holding Marshall Public Schools fully accountable. I could have sought those things out myself. I could have listened more actively. My family could have introduced me to those things. But Marshall Public Schools, as part of the system that perpetuates racism, is fully responsible to teach students about those things. White students, Black students, Latinx students, all students. And so from that point forward, I've undergone like a thorough re-examination of myself, and I realized that I left this community just ignorant of those issues. And the lack of education around race and justice and white supremacy left me unprepared to have conversations and have pertaining to racial injustice. And so I stand here as a white person who's upset about the education I received and the lack thereof around what I feel are very pivotal issues. But I also need to recognize that it's a privilege to learn about those issues and not to feel them, experience them every day, like we've heard examples of tonight. And so that's why I was one of the students that started the petition, because while I do applaud some of the changes that I've heard that Marshall has taken since I've left, there's clearly more work that needs to be done, and it needs to be an ongoing change. And so that's why our recommendation was an action plan that has clear and tangible goals with deadlines and transparency and input from the community. Because I think, as we've heard tonight, there are people willing to put in work and make their voices heard, and there are solutions in this room and in this community that need to be leveraged moving forward and need to be involved moving forward. So yeah, I guess thank you again for listening, for being here, and I hope we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Wyatt. In that same light, I'd like to say now that we're planning on having more of these sessions. If the board is amenable to having them in this style, that's all right. If not, that's okay too. Marshall Education Association Teaching Union will be listening as well. We're looking at a timeline of bi-weekly meetings where we have some momentum, if not monthly. Until we can get a couple of listening sessions like this and just hear experience, because that's what we need. For too long, we've sat and done the status quo. It's time for change. And so I feel like after having taught here for 10 years, this is, I believe, the first time when we have a full board that is willing to take this on, that we have administration that is willing to take this on, and my colleagues are willing to take this on. And work in tune with community, people of color, parents, my Latino families who I work with day in, day out. Thank you for sharing tonight. I don't want to cut anybody off either, so Claire, if you're seeing anybody in the chat that I've missed. But I do want to say that this conversation will continue. A couple more listening sessions like this I think are key before we move in and just attempt to make policy change. I appreciate the ire and the passion from the alumni that started the petition. Listening first is what we talked about when we met with them, and then moving forward with tangible policy changes with deadlines, like I said. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Again, one last call. I don't want to cut anybody else off online. If there's anyone else who wanted to share this evening before we close up. One person too.
There are some that are connected by phone, so if you want to let them know that *6 is unmute, just in case they're trying to.
Sure. If you're connected by phone, *6 will unmute you. If you're joining us telephonically and would like to share as well, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now if you'd like to. All right, I'll hand it back to the board president. Thank you again.
Perfect. We're moving on to the last item of new business, which is discussion of future board agenda items. Does any of the board have any discussion items we want to add to the upcoming meetings? Hearing none, as we conclude the committee meeting and listening session, on behalf of the Marshall Public Schools, I want to thank you all for attending tonight, whether virtually or in person. We appreciate hearing your experiences and ideas and look forward to working with you to bring about changes that make our district better for all. As Mr. Jansen mentioned earlier, this is one of several listening sessions we intend to have. So please encourage others to participate and have their voices and experiences heard. And I thank you again for participating tonight. We really appreciate it. With that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. We need a motion. We have a motion by Hirschland,
I'll second.
second by Waking to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you again for coming.
There are comment cards on the back table on your way out if you'd like to fill out questions, comments, and a Google form as well online.
Thank you.